20 years in Mozambique. Give us an indication of the growth that you've experienced over the 20-year block and whether you've seen a significant improvement over the past few years.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a very, very big upswing in property interest in Mozambique and also the property market in general. Obviously, most of that you'll find in the capital and places like Beira, but Vilanculos is also a very unique destination, and we've seen in the last couple of years that the upswing is dramatic.
And Vilanculos is around 700 kilometers from Maputo.
That's right, so 690.
690, okay, you know the exact numbers. With regards to the foreign interest versus the local interest, I mean, what kind of mix are we seeing? Are we seeing a lot of South African investors coming into the fray, or would you say that there's international investors looking at US and Europeans as well?
When it comes to private homes and private investments, it's mostly South Africans. And when you look at larger corporate hotel groups and so on, it's definitely people from all over the world.
Tell me about the market crash in 2008 and whether you actually experienced a slump over that period.
I think we are very fortunate to have been in Mozambique, and we definitely have seen a lot less of it than anywhere else. There's also, a definite effect during 2008 that we've experienced, but shortly thereafter it became known quite quickly that Mozambique is a better destination to have your money in, and smaller and larger investors definitely was attracted with us.
Okay, so are we looking at a lot of investment within the tourism space, within commercial property, within urban property? Are we seeing a mixture of all these factors?
I think tourism is by far the biggest and the most prominent, and but in that you obviously get your large hotel groups and then smaller investors with smaller lodges and also private homes.
With regards to some of the constraints, cost of building, cost of doing construction in Mozambique, is that far higher than what we see here in South Africa? And then we bring in another component, which is electricity, and that also plays a big factor as to whether a development then goes on.
That's absolutely important, of course, but with renewable energy and all sorts of things, people are coming up with different solutions to old problems, and but Vilanculos itself does not really have the same sort of constraint as far as power is concerned. We're getting electricity in Vilanculos from Sasol, who have a refinery just outside of Vilanculos, and so the power generated in Vilanculos is coming from a power generated with a gas, a natural gas that's found in Vilanculos.
Tell us about property prices over the last 20 years. So if you bought a property in Mozambique or invested in a development in Mozambique 20 years ago, where would your money be at right now?
Oh no, there's definitely a very nice growth depending on where you are. If you're in the big cities, there's been a dramatic growth, and good destinations like Vilanculos and obviously in the TED area, if you go to around the industrial and mining sector growth areas, your growth was phenomenal.
Okay, so when you say phenomenal, what kind of numbers are we looking at?
Typical, to give numbers will be quite difficult, but I would say you would have doubled your prices several times over in many instances.
I mean, have you seen a significant slowdown in the growth of prices over the last few years since the market crash, or do you think that they've stabilized?
During 2008 and shortly thereafter, yes, but it recovered quite quickly. And as I say, the mining sector that is now growing dramatically in Mozambique and TED, more specifically, have definitely created a sort of a safety net that didn't have the same effect in property market.
What about access to land? I mean, are we seeing a bit of a concern there? We know that property laws are slightly different to what we experience here in South Africa, and I know that relative to the global standards as well, this is why foreigners perhaps are deterred when it comes to Mozambique. What has your experience been?
I am totally confident with the property laws in Mozambique, and most commercial banks in South Africa are. And it's obviously different to South Africa, but it's nothing to worry about. It's absolutely adequate.
What about access to land?
Land, depending on what you want to do. Obviously, if you, when you talk about that, it's important to realize that you have to do it legal, and when you do that, it will take a process, and if you follow that process, it is available, and the cost, there will be a cost there too, but land will be available, and the government is actually making it possible for developers and
so it's an easy environment for you.
Absolutely possible. Yeah.
I mean, when you talk to building plans so that they can get approved, we know that there's a slight backlog here in South Africa. I mean, what kind of environment are we looking at?
A lot easier, a lot easier and much faster than here. I know that building plans through the town planning divisions in the municipalities do take time in South Africa. It's not the same in Mozambique.
Okay, so when it comes to the average cost of a project or the average price of a project, I mean, what kind of ranges are we looking at here?
If you're talking about building price per square meter, I would say probably between 7,500 and 9,500 rand a square meter for very good type of holiday house.
Are we starting to see, I mean, we mentioned foreigners a bit earlier with regards to Europeans and also from the United States. What about the Chinese? I know that they have been showing a lot of interest in Mozambique. Is it filtering through even into the residential and commercial property space?
Yeah, no, there are, the airport, there's an international airport in Vilanculos and also the airport in Maputo have been rebuilt by the Chinese. A large part of the roads in Vilanculos and between Maputo and Vilanculos have also been newly built, and that was also done by the Chinese. So they are also there, but I don't think the Chinese are necessarily in significant numbers larger than anybody else.
Is it getting very competitive in the environment for you? I'm sure that now everyone's realized perhaps you should be in developments in Mozambique. Is it starting to squeeze your margins as a company?
Yeah, no, there's definitely more people now that's doing it, but we've separated ourselves. There's a lot of people, especially South Africans, that do developments with more natural type of building materials, local materials. Now, of course, we don't do that, and we're not into that market. So for that, we've shielded ourselves a little bit from the others.
And I do hope that there's a lot of skills transfer as well to ensure that the locals are, of course, they benefit. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Great to have you on the program.